Oh,
Great. Welcome, everyone. My name is Wendy Williams, and I am happy to be in a group with Lori Carpenos. This is called The Teachings of Sydney Banks, and on Wednesdays, we actually do a book group. And currently, we're doing the book Beyond Diagnosis, written by Chana Studley, and this is number 4 of her book. She's had a few before this one. And this one's gathering a lot of attention, and as well it should be. It's a wonderful collection of firsthand accounts of how the teachings of Sydney Banks, or the Inside Out Understanding, has made an amazing difference in the psychological well-being of people who had diagnoses and medications and lots of things. So Hannah comes to us today, and most days, from her home in Jerusalem. And we're very happy that you're here with us today to have some time with the group that's assembled here for questions and answers. So is there anything else we should know about you, Hannah?
No, but thank you so much to you and Laurie for organizing this. It's always wonderful to hear people's feedback who've read the book or to answer questions. So I love doing this. Thank you. Yeah.
Good.
I want to thank you, Hannah, for, it's just wonderful to have you with us, available to answer questions. The work that you have put into creating this book. I'll tell a little story that Wendy and I share between us. When we were at Viva a few months ago in Albir, Spain, I was sharing with Wendy how I was talking to this delightful young lady at the bar at the hotel with her boyfriend. And Wendy says to me, "Do you know who that is?" And she pointed to the story in your book. I would say this young woman probably has gone through more upheaval than anyone I have ever heard of. And to speak with somebody who I thought was just somebody at the bar, normal, totally delightful person. We were joking back and forth, and I was shocked. If I had false teeth, they would have fallen out of my face. So, and what you are doing for the field of mental health is quite amazing.
Thank you.
Everybody's saying this is going to be a textbook in medical schools, nursing schools.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Take it away, Hannah.
Wouldn't that be nice? Yeah, as you were saying that, like the amount of work it took. When I do these things, I'm so glad that I didn't know how much work it would take. Otherwise, I might not have started, Because by the end of it, I had 70 contributors, right? So me and the editor had to work out how to, like corral 70 different people. And I see Laurie's story is in the book too. So that was, I'm so grateful to her for giving us her story. So imagine all the emails it takes times 70, So meeting those people and like making sure everybody's happy and there's 2 editions of the book because the first time around I did make some spelling mistakes and some I got some people's credentials wrong and people were happy to tell me that. And so I had to, that's why there's a second edition because I had to kind of tidy it up a little bit. But no, I think it's in good shape now.
Yeah, and just to
Oh, you're muted. You suddenly muted there.
Just to tag on to what Laurie said, the woman that we met in Spain is currently 28, 29?
I think she's in her early 30s now.
In her early 30s. And by the time she was 22 or 23, how many diagnoses did she have from mental health providers?
10.
10 diagnoses.
Yeah.
She had depression, she had eating disorder, right? Addiction, self-harm. Self-harm.
That comes under borderline personality disorder.
Borderline personality disorder.
PTSD. Yeah. On and on. Yeah.
Yep. And when she came across this understanding because she happened to bump into you somewhere along the line, and so you could tell the story, but within a very short amount of time, within a couple of years, she was thinking about going to get a college degree. And the college said, we've kind of read a little bit, whatever. Are you sure you can keep up? So she had to go to a doctor and say, could you please give me a clean bill of health? And the psychiatrist had never had that opportunity before, ever, to
Yeah.
give somebody a clean bill of health. So go ahead.
No, that's the story. So when I suggested she go to the psychiatrist and ask them to write, a letter for her saying she's, off all her medication and she's doing great, the doctor in all his decades of clinical practice had never, ever written a clean bill of health for anyone. He didn't know how to do it. She had to give him suggestions, right? She's the
Right.
patient and she's helping him do the admin. And so yeah, so she got into college. That was after and doing it all in a second language and having drunk her way out of high school. So she had to do all the psychometry, the qualifications to get into university in the second language and got in. And then they recommended she do her master's degree before she even finished her undergrad. So yeah, it's an amazing story. Recovery, resilience, yeah.
If anybody that has a question, I want you to unmute yourself and say, Wendy, I have a question. So, because I can just keep talking to Hannah till the cows come home and ask her questions about this. So please ask any questions that you have about mental health concerns or things that you're doubtful about. So, I mean, there are people in there that had been on psychotherapeutic drugs like, antidepressants for years and are no longer on them. There are people that, I think of this one woman, she came on 2 weeks ago named Yael. And what was her diagnosis?
Psychosis.
Psychosis. She would think that she was somebody else. She would think that the world was falling apart and she had to save it. She had grandiose ideas and she had been admitted to a psychiatric hospital 5 or 6 times.
Yeah, multiple times. Yeah.
Yep. And then it's been settled in the past 3 or 4 years. She has a lovely life as an artist and she helps other people and yeah. Yeah. Did you have any big surprises when you were taking all these stories? Because by the time you were collecting these stories, you were already convinced that this works beautifully. Did you have any are you kidding me moments when you collected the stories?
Not so much in the kind of the narrative of the stories, because a lot of the people I knew them already, so I kind of had an idea of their story. But I had a few moments when I remember Cecilia Hector's story. Cecilia's in Sweden, I think it's Sweden or Norway, Scandinavia, let's say. And she, in fact, when she offered me her story, she said, which diagnosis, she also had so many. She's like, which one do you want me to write about? So I kind of looked in the ones I had already to see which ones I was missing. So let's choose one that was more, that I didn't have already. And she had a terrible time. She ended up in psychiatric units and she'd had electric shock treatment. Her family had put her in hospitals because they couldn't cope or they were so scared for her. And she's doing amazing now, good, happy ending. But at the end of her story, she wrote something, I have to look it up. She wrote something and it really made me think. Where is it? Cecilia's story. I think, she wrote about depression, so on page 190. And she wrote, she said, right at the end of the story, she said, because of my own experience, it worries me that EC, electric shock treatment, is still given to people. When you know life can be lived with so much more simplicity, just by trust and understanding from within, you want to share it, give hope to others. Since we are not broken, we also do not need to be treated. And that struck, I was like, and I suddenly thought, yeah, if we're not broken, why do we need all this treatment? And if there is no such thing as a chemical imbalance, why are doctors still giving chemicals, pills, to fix an imbalance that doesn't exist, and by their own admission doesn't exist? So if they're admitting, that's what her comment made me think was, if the doctors are really admitting there is no such thing as a chemical imbalance, it's, that was just an analogy they used to market these medications, then why would you need to treat and balance something that doesn't, is a myth, right?
Yeah. Leonard, go ahead and unmute yourself and jump unmute. Unmute, Leonard. Yeah, and then we'll listen in.
Okay, I
Feel
see
free
that
to
my,
talk to Hannah. Go ahead.
yeah, I see that my wife has joined, or there she is. Cynthia, why don't you ask Hannah whatever you feel like asking about our son? Um,
Cynthia, can you hear us?
I heard part of it. Somebody was calling through because I'm on my phone. I
I,
I
I
think
I
I
was
was he
I was
wants
suggesting,
to,
Cynthia, that you take the opportunity, since you know so much more about what Jason's going through than I do. Use this opportunity to ask Hannah whatever.
yeah, yeah. Um so my son is hi Connor.
Hi.
Um so my son is 37, has struggled with chronic pain for since high school, and no diagnosis, couldn't get a diagnosis for decades.
Cynthia, we're not hearing you. Sometimes if you turn your video
Oh,
off, we'll be able to hear the voice without the video. That's been my experience.
Now that's you're muted now. We can't hear you.
okay.
There you go.
Can
Try
you hear
that.
me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, hi. Anyway, my son is 37. He's suffered with chronic pain since high school. Nobody could find a diagnosis. Everything is negative, negative, negative. And recently, but in the past 5 or 6 years, somebody diagnosed him with small fiber neuropathy. And he's been on every drug. He's done ketamine. He's done recently a lidocaine drip, one of the newer treatments. Now, the thing is, he works with a shaman. He has been of all. Okay. And and he's grown a lot. I mean, he does everything: nutrition, relaxation, breathing, nootropics, microdosing mushrooms. So he really does everything that it can possibly help in the natural and psychological way that we know of and that he knows of. And he's grown tremendously. But he has pain, and the pain seems to be worsening. It goes from, it could pop up anywhere in his body. If he has dental work, he can wind up with facial pain for months. He has neuropathy in his feet, and now he has some neuropathy in his arms. And he's a baker. And he goes to some very dark places sometimes, which is understandable, but it's just
Mm.
it's just a difficult situation,
So mom and dad,
and I don't know what to do.
Mom and dad, I'm so glad that you're here for this son of yours. Is he blessed to have you as his parents? That's my first thought. I'm curious, what are you most curious to learn about the fact that there's this Beyond Diagnosis book where people are relieved of their mental anxiety or mental concerns? What are you most curious about that you'd like to know from Hannah?
How to do that?
How to do that?
Yeah.
how to just practically,
You're on,
what,
Chana.
what
Right,
can
right.
he do uh, from a psychological viewpoint to
That he's not
change
doing.
his experience? Because, as my
Well,
wife said, he
right.
goes
So
to some very, very dark
Wait,
places.
I
I'm
want
happy
to
to
have,
answer if I'm happy to, I've got plenty to answer. First of all, I got well when I stopped doing all that stuff. Because all of that, it's very busy, you know, from the treatments and the ketamine and the shaman and the, you know, it's like I was exhausted just listening to you list it all, right? His nervous system is way, way revved up. And so all the fixing, the treatments is going to keep that energy revved up. When we think we need fixing, we're going to get desperate and look anywhere and everywhere. I mean, I did the same thing. It's not a judgment. I did the same thing. I can remember being in Australia when I was working there on a movie, and I had a terrible kidney urine infection at the time. And I was so desperate that the medicine that the regular doctor gave me didn't work. I remember being in this weird clinic of some hippie, and I let her inject into my bladder. Like, I can't believe I did that. But when you're desperate and you're looking for pain relief, because it's exhausting and frustrating being in pain for that long. I had it for 25 years. I had allergies for 50 years, which were, I couldn't breathe. So I would, so let's slow down a moment. Let's go back to some basic ideas. So the basic idea behind the diagnosis book that I wrote is a quote from Sydney Banks, which says, "There need only be one generic mental illness, a misunderstanding of the role of thought." So how does that apply to physical stuff? So this is where this was my first big insight and growth with the principles, is that when I started understanding, excuse me, what Sydney Banks is pointing to, my thinking started to slow down. My mind started to slow down. And consequently, my body started to feel safe. I had been having some kind of physiological chronic condition since I was a small child. And when I got honest with myself, I realized I was way more anxious than I thought I was. I didn't realize how anxious I was from a small child, being very nervous about what you thought of me, making mistakes. You know, a lot of people with chronic pain, I would say, are perfectionists. I mean, that's a very big generalization. But when you have the kind of view of the world where everything has to be a certain way, and then things aren't that way, we get hypervigilant, we're checking, we're looking everywhere, especially if you've been through some traumatic, experience where hypervigilance is a symptom of someone who's been through some kind of trauma. And what happens is, if your mind is on high alert all the time for either what's wrong out there or for what might be wrong with our bodies, because people with chronic pain have we tend to get a habit of every morning you wake up checking how does it feel? How bad does it feel? How is my pain today? How am I going to get through the day? How am I going to do my job? How am I going to, do all the things I need to do? And then all of that goes in what I'm going to call the danger box, because our brains don't speak English or French or Hebrew or Spanish or any other language. They speak the language of safety and danger. Your brain is trained for survival. So everything, smells, sounds, what we eat is always like, is it safe or is it dangerous? That's your brain is working that out all day long. So if we're hyper-vigilant about our circumstances, about the state of our body, that's going to go in the danger box, because it certainly doesn't feel safe when you're checking and looking everywhere. Now, the checking and looking everywhere is why we're doing so many treatments. And I think for me, my pain went away, and I had 25 years of it. I was paralyzed a couple of times. I was, really pretty bad. It went away because I started feeling safe. I started to understand how my mind worked, and so my body didn't need to scream at me anymore. So I'm going to suggest your son's body is screaming at him to slow down. And because when you start realizing there's actually nothing wrong, then the treatments, you start seeing that they're not even needed. I had a monthly chiropractic appointment for decades. I haven't been to the chiropractor in years. I don't do any kind of treatment. I don't need to. I don't meditate. I don't do any expressive writing. I don't do any of that stuff anymore because my body feels, my mind is pretty calm and I feel safe. And so my body doesn't need to scream at me. So does any of that land with you? Does that resonate, either of you, Leonard or Cynthia?
A lot, yes, a lot of it, especially as you describe how you feel. Like you wake up in the morning and it's like checking, how do I feel? How am I going to get through the day? Blah, blah, all of that does. He
Yeah.
has rejected, I mean, he at this point, as far as traditional medicine, he has no use for it anymore. That's, unless something dramatic happens. So a lot of the work he does is inner, but he does a lot of inner work.
Right.
And
I would challenge, Cynthia, sorry
is
to interrupt you, but I
totally,
would challenge that. The inner work he's doing is what we would call outside in. Because inner work that is trying to fix and change something, like reframe our thinking or to make us feel a little bit better, that's implying again that there's something wrong. But I'm going to tell you, there's nothing wrong with his inner life. His inner life is just caught up in an illusion, like trying to fix a shadow, right? A shadow could be, a cute shape or a scary monster.
yeah, he actually,
right? Right. So he's scaring himself with his own thinking, and that's what he's trying to fix. So going back to Sid Banks's quote is, or going back to Sid's most famous quote, which is, if only people could learn not to be afraid of their own experience, that would change the world. Well, it changed my world. It changed my inner world in that I started to see that I didn't have to be frightened if I had some weird thinking. I can still have a weird thought. I can still have a funky thought. I can still have an ache or a pain sometimes, right? I broke my ankle a couple of months ago. I've had pneumonia. Things still happen, but I don't have to get scared by it anymore. And so therefore there's nothing to treat and nothing to do. And it heals quickly. It moves on. I come back to balance. And so it's a much more smoother experience rather than the extremes that need to be fixed and changed. Now, I would say if he's interested in talking, I'd be happy to talk to him and like, explain this kind of stuff also. And I have a book, the Painless book is very much about the chronic pain and how and just one other thing, whatever his physiological symptoms are, for our purposes, they're kind of irrelevant. And that doesn't mean we don't care. And I'm not saying he's not in pain because I know it's agony, but I've worked with people from everything from fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue to migraines to stomach problems to fertility issues, and so how the form that the body starts screaming in is kind of random. What's important is the speed of the thinking and slowing down, right? So it's the same solution no matter what the symptoms are. And if he's anything like most chronic pain people, the pain morphs and changes. It goes to different parts of the body. It now goes to the knees, and now it's migraines, and then it's food, and because it's the body is trying to get our attention, and the sirens, the signals get louder and
well,
louder.
we know it's definitely related to stress, because when he's stressed, it's worse. When he's not
There you
stressed,
go.
it's better. So that
Yeah.
all tracks, and he knows that. It's a matter of creating. In fact, I was just talking to him about it, creating a calm, relaxed atmosphere in his home, and where he feels, but his brain doesn't work so time. He's everything's got to be perfect. Everything is, his baking has to be perfect, and
Yeah.
his
Well,
brain goes
tell
way
him
faster
if
than
he's,
he.
I'm happy to have a free chat with him if he's open to that. So you can.
How would he contact you?
Laurie can give you my information, or I have a website that you can, contact me through the website. It's my name, hannahstudley.com. So.
Well, I think one of the things, just listening to you, I know that one of the things that's difficult for him is he rarely gets to speak to anybody who really can understand what he's going through.
Yeah.
And listening to
Well, he
you,
has the shaman who's excellent.
uh,
He had his
yeah,
shaman
but
and
I'm
he had a
Well,
saying,
brother
but
that
I wonder if the shaman had been mugged twice and had chronic pain for 2 decades like Hannah. And there is something
he
to be
had
said.
chronic pain most of his. No, he did. He had chronic pain most of
The
his life,
shaman.
and he
Okay.
studied. Yes,
Okay,
and
good.
he became a shaman by going to India
Oh,
and
okay,
studying
good.
with all
Well,
these masters.
Hannah,
He's not a. Go ahead.
That's okay. Hannah gave you a wonderful opportunity to have your son, if he's willing to have a chat with her. And
Absolutely.
he may see something new and different, and just to kind of circle back to the wider conversation of inside out. The word stress came up a couple of minutes ago. The word stress came up, and but maybe if we make a nice, calm, lovely environment, well, as soon as you open your laptop and you read the morning news, that calm environment might go away. As
Yeah,
soon as
he's given up.
a thunderstorm happens
Yes,
outside and the lightning comes a little too close to your house, the calmness goes away. We can't control our world or our environment very much, but we do have some choices on how much attention we pay to that fear or that anxiety that comes up, like, oh, my head hurts. What if I've got we do have, that's where the choice point is, and that comes from the inside. And
I understand that. Yeah,
everybody's got the steering wheel, which is great.
yeah,
So anybody
yeah.
else
I
have any
understand that.
questions for Hannah? Oh, great,
I just want
good.
to
Well, I hope,
thank Hannah. I want to thank Hannah and say I really appreciate the offer, and I will talk to my son and have him listen to this part of the recording, and
yeah,
he's open to anything that is under his control.
That's
Thank you.
beautiful.
that's beautiful.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Cynthia.
Yes,
And did I put your contact correctly in the chat,
Yeah,
Chana?
I think it was good. Yeah.
Everybody's got it.
Yeah,
Great.
yeah.
okay,
So
great.
any other questions
please.
out there? Any other questions out there about psychiatric diagnoses or stress or this inside out concept or Hannah's experience or?
Question.
Yeah, go
Martin
for it,
or
Stuart.
Stuart?
Hi, Hannah.
Hi, Stuart.
I've seen you before.
Yes, I
On-
recognize. Hey.
I've seen you actually, I think it was on a 3P GC webinar.
Right.
And I have your book, and I have to sadly report I have not been able to crack it open and take time to read it, although I have discussed it. So in the work that I do, I come across a large population of people that have mental health issues that either are partially or totally unaddressed, except with medication and very large doses of medication, and then sent out into the world to, live their life however they can. And a lot of times these medications have some very strong side effects, debilitating side effects. And once people are left to their own devices, they tend to just get off of them to some pretty detrimental situations. So I know that your book is being reviewed by Jack Pransky and some other Tom Kelly, and they're doing some
Yeah,
research.
we've written a research paper. It's being peer reviewed by the APA right now. So yeah.
Well, good luck with that. That's great.
Mhm.
So I've actually, was wondering if there's any people in the Three Principles community that are looking at, I don't know if the titrating is the right word, or working with people that are having mental health issues, where yes, there is a legitimate chemical imbalance going on, right?
No, I'm going to stop you right there. There is no such thing as a chemical imbalance. It's a
Okay.
myth. It's an absolute myth. In the book, I quote top psychiatrists from the FDA and the American Psychiatric Association who claim that they never said that it's an urban myth produced by the drug companies or the marketing people. And yet, go to any medical school today and medical students are taught that there's such a thing. And so I've literally had arguments with people. They say, yes, of course there's a chemical imbalance. And I say, where's your proof? It's like an urban myth that's just been repeated and repeated. I mean, I can go into more details about it, but so I would just, sorry to interrupt you, but
No.
keep repeating that as it's not a fact. And,
Right.
and you say to somebody, where's your research?
Mm.
And if they do produce research, I'd say, who paid for that research? The drug companies paid for it. So, right? Call
Well,
me
as a matter
cynical
of
because I
fact,
am.
as a matter of fact, the Sacklers, I think the name Sacklers, they're
Yep.
the people that own the company that produced the oxycodone.
Yep.
I'm not remembering the name. Oh God, I can't remember the name of the company. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Yeah, and I know that they totally hyped up what their drug can do, and it was
Right.
flawed studies and
Right.
all of that.
I just want to make aware that there are two other people that want to ask a question, and we only have
Okay.
about 16 minutes. So I just want to be conscious of that. And I just want to jump in on this because what I heard, Stuart,
I didn't hear, did Stuart ask a question? I didn't hear.
about titrating, but
Oh,
Well,
right.
well,
So I
yeah,
can,
but
yeah. So that's me. I work with people coming off of medication. Obviously I'm not a doctor. I'm not licensed in any kind of medical field. So I just want to be clear about that. I'm not giving medical advice. So the way I work with people is I insist that they have a medical professional, whether it's their own psychiatrist or family doctor or even a pharmacist. So and I do know I know a licensed psychiatrist in the UK and one who works in about 4 or 5 different states in America who's licensed to do this. And so the psychiatrist or pharmacist, whoever they get the plan from, it's called hyperbolic. Hyperbolic tapering is what we're looking for, because if the person, let's say they stepped up the medication, if you reverse that process, it doesn't work, because you need when you come off of it, you need to go so slowly that the last few drop downs have to be minuscule, like because the brain will it has gotten so used to the medication, especially if they've been on it for a long time and heavy doses and multiple ones. Like I'm working with a woman right now in Atlanta who's on 6 medications, and she's going to the psychiatrist tomorrow to ask for a detox plan. I'm not hopeful that the psychiatrist is going to agree, right? She's on 6 medications and she's panicking every day. But in the week we've been working together, she woke up without panic one day. It's like, so it can work, right? So she's panicking again today. So we'll see where she's at with the psychiatrist tomorrow. Right? So my job as a coach is to kind of hold their hand, like as it were, to be there as a support, a cheerleader, a reminder, because especially when they're on the days when they step down to another a lower dose, it can be very bumpy. It can be very uncomfortable. There's such a thing as chemical anxiety. It's not just like the kind of anxiety we talk about, in coaching or psychology, but the chemicals have had such an effect on the brain that they're actually manufacturing a chemical anxiety. And so my job as a coach is to kind of like be there for them. I communicate with people via WhatsApp, And just remind them, remember, you stepped down your medication today. That's why you're feeling wobbly. That's why you're feeling anxious. There's nothing wrong. You're safe. I'm kind of like, giving the pep talk. And then they get through that, and then they kind of get used to the new balance, the new levels, and then we'd go again. So having a plan that everybody has on a piece of paper or an email, something we can stick to, and something that's being advised by a medical professional, so none of us are being sued and we're all being taken care of, professionally. And so it's like a team effort, the support of the family, a coach, and the medical professional are all working together. And I've been doing that with people for quite a few years now. And it doesn't always work. People get scared, and then they freak out, and then they go back to the doctor, and the doctor says, "Oh, look, your illness came back." And it's not. It's the side effects of the the detox that they're actually experiencing. So I've gotten more and more experience with this, of being able to kind of differentiate between the original situation coming back, the original issues, because I hate to call it an illness, because it's not. It's a misunderstanding, right? And then the symptoms of the detox, like working out which is which. And that's why having a coach that can help them think more clearly, because it's very hard for them to think clearly when they're panicked or experiencing detox symptoms. Yeah.
Great. Does that help, Stuart?
Yes.
Does that help?
But I think Chana and I should have a one-on-one, because I have a lot more to talk about because of the area that I'm dealing
Sure.
with, and how we could get something together, because
Yeah, I'd love that. Thank
there's a
you.
lot of misinformation going on.
Oh,
And of
yeah.
course,
Sure.
and of course, the medical profession and the drug companies especially. I mean, wouldn't it be better if we didn't start people down this road to begin with?
Yes.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
but oh yeah, that would be great.
Yes.
So anyway,
Yeah.
we'll
Good. So
Yeah, we'll talk.
Martin, did you unlock your red light? And Mary, did you want to speak too? Right? If I got that right, both of you would like to raise your hand?
Martin? Looks
Well,
like you're unmuted.
oh, go ahead, Martin.
Oh, Mary.
It's okay. I've got various things, but please.
All right, Martin, you go first. I'm making the call. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Wow. So many things come up here. Fantastic. So is the suggestion that everything in the DSM manual is only a sped up mind, and there's nothing else going on?
Yeah. Yep. I guarantee you, well, two things. I remember when I was learning with George Pransky right back at the beginning, he said to me that everything in the DSM is a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
Right.
But Dr. Bill says that, doesn't he?
Right. So like George described it as a very comprehensive list of coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
I would go as far to say as you could open the DSM on any page, any diagnosis, and I guarantee you it started with prolonged stressful thinking.
Yeah.
Now, why one person goes to drinking and somebody else goes to cutting themselves and somebody else is flipping out into, an alternate universe. The doctors don't know, and I don't know that there's any benefit in trying to work that out. It's just each person has their particular repertoire of ways of coping, which are often self-destructive.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say, going back to Sid's quote of like, there's only one. I mean, I would say even a little different. He says there's one generic mental illness. I would just say there's one generic misunderstanding.
Yeah.
I even hesitate to call it an illness, because I don't even like using the word cured. None of the people in my book were cured because they weren't sick in the first place. It was a misunderstanding, right? It's not an illness, So and because they're and also with the DSM, I think there's only two diagnoses, Parkinson's and maybe end-stage syphilis, that have scientific proof that there's a biological, markers and things happening in the brain. There is no scientific proof for anything else in the DSM. They will say there is.
Oh, yeah.
But then if you ask them enough questions, who paid for the research, who were they actually researching on, how much of it was, made up and exaggerated, then there really is nothing. And it's been 30 or 40 years now that we've had a chance to prove this, and they still haven't.
I've read quite a bit around that, and it's awful the way they've contrived it. So what about suppose I fight or flight. So I get all upset and my brain gets flooded with cortisol and various chemicals.
Yeah.
What's going on for me there? I mean, obviously, I've got revved up thinking, and
Yeah.
as I understand that, then that does actually cause a physiological reaction through
Yeah.
chemicals.
Yeah.
So, can you briefly say a bit about? I mean, obviously, that
Yeah.
as I settle down, I would imagine all that settles down and just flood,
Yeah.
floods away.
Yes. So the way I was taught it, both as a trauma counselor and by Dr. Bill Pettit,
Yeah.
is that when we have like the fight or flight response was designed to be activated for about 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And it takes about 72 hours for that really to dissipate and come back to balance, because what it was originally, the way we were designed by that, infinite intelligence was for survival. And so if you run up a tree to get away from a tiger or got yourself out of a burning house or out of a car accident or something, then, we shouldn't really be dealing with, hopefully, with any kind of traumatic experience like that for at least another 72 hours, it's got, right? So when I remember being in class when I was learning that, and I thought, hold on a minute, my clients aren't sitting there in stress for just for 20 minutes. They're sitting there for 2 hours, 4, 8, 16, 18 hours a day. And I've described this to some people and they said, yeah, I felt like that since I was 10 years old.
Yeah.
Right. So I'll tell you a quick little personal story. And I'm happy to go over time if other people are because I arrived late, so I'm happy to go more time. So I had this experience a few years ago where I used to make wedding dresses, and I had to do the alterations on a wedding dress, and the girl told me to do this work. I started chopping up her wedding dress to do an alteration, and then she messaged me saying, "Don't do anything yet." And I'm like, I've already cut it up. Like, oh my God. And adrenaline shot to my toes in seconds, right? Because I don't know this girl. Maybe she's going to shout and scream. Maybe her mom's going to sue me. I don't, right? Because and I'd only done what we'd all agreed to, and happy ending. The dress worked out great. She got married. It's all happy ending. But at that time when that happened, I thought, I'm curious how long it will take for the adrenaline to get out of my system. So I remember looking at the clock, and it was early in the morning because that's why I'd started to get a lot of work done. And I looked at the clock and it took about an hour. So the adrenaline only shot into me, the cortisol and all that stuff, only shot into me for a few seconds because we worked it out pretty quickly. It took about an hour for my body to feel normal again. Because in that hour, and I say it was early in the morning, so it was about 7 a.m. I was pacing up and down. I couldn't sit still. I felt like antsy. It's a great American word. Like I felt really antsy, right? Like my blood was fizzing. I couldn't concentrate on anything. My thinking had speeded up. I desperately wanted chocolate, right? So I found myself in the kitchen, going through the kitchen cupboards looking, and all I could find was chocolate chips for baking. So I'm eating chocolate chips for breakfast at like 7:30 in the morning. And then I started watching something funny on YouTube just to I want to feel better. And as I'm dealing with all of this in this hour, this really clear thought went through my head. And it said, this is why people go to the doctor. Because if you're living in that kind of agitated, antsy feeling all the time or hours a day, it's awful. I want relief. And so whether we're going to like psychiatric medications or food or wine or, whatever it is, even exercise, even doing charity work, there's plenty of ways we can get really busy to kind of hide and cover up that horrible feeling. So as three principles coaches, what we're doing is, like, as we say, going further upstream and helping people see. Like, luckily, I knew how my mind works. So in that situation, I knew I just had to sit it out until the adrenaline settled and it passed. And then I was fine. And it turned into like a very useful story. Right? So I understood what was happening. When you don't understand what's happening, that's what gets scary and frightening. And then people overreact. And then if you're living in that, that's how I think I ended up with all the chronic pain and probably why, Cynthia's son is, because if you're living in that, our bodies weren't designed to sustain that level of being revved up all the time, either psychologically or physically. And that's why we start getting sick, or why ultimately, what could start out as depression and then goes into psychosis and then into schizophrenia, like they're just different grades of misunderstanding. And eventually people don't want to be here anymore. And in a way you can't blame them, because how could you live in that state of mind? It's too painful.
And so within that, is there any more chemical dysregulation that takes place? Because I'm constantly caught up in thought. I've
Right.
already produced the adrenaline, and do
Yeah.
I get more stuff going on?
Like I say, I'm not a doctor, so I don't know that I can answer that question. But even if I could, how would that be helpful to you?
Well, it was
Unless you've got a chemistry set there to verify it, then
yeah,
I'll just tell you something. When I started learning and researching and understanding all of this, I found myself wanting to really understand the technical details of how the thyroid works with the adrenal glands, and then I suddenly realized, hold on a minute, my pain went away without me knowing any of this technical stuff.
Yeah, it's
So-
just that we often get asked that sort of question, though, don't we? I'm a teacher, and a lot of the people I work with are very outside in. And it's just like information. So very, very thank you for that. If I may, this idea, again, we get in schools about trauma and the body, that to me sounds like nonsense. Am I being unfair?
No, I agree. I totally agree with you. And I just to finish, I want to talk about that, but just to finish on what you were saying about the chemicals and the adrenaline, there's actually, as far as I understand, there's very little difference between the chemical reaction in the body through like fear and panic to excitement.
Yeah.
Right? Excitement is your blood pressure's gone up, the adrenaline, the cortisol's going, your heart's beating a bit faster, your hands might be shaking. Is it excitement or is it panic? Right? And so that's an interesting thing. But to go to the traumas held in the body, it's a concept, it's a story. Because when I've asked people about that, I can remember being at a party one time and this woman was saying, oh, she was some kind of, I don't know, mind-body counselor. And she said to me, oh, no, it's definitely held in the body. So I was a bit naughty. And so I asked her some questions. I said, where in the body?
Yeah.
Where, like, tell me, like, what's your research show you, which part of the body? Like I said, is like my third mugging, is that in my elbow where I hit the ground, or is it, is it in the neck where they hurt me? Is the resentment of my mother in my kneecaps? I mean, like, tell me, where is it? And she says, no, it's not like that. I said, what is it like then? Tell me. And she said, well, it's more of like the sensations that you feel in different like parts of your body when you remember those horrible memories. I said, oh, okay.
Right.
And how do we experience that? She says, well, through memories and sensation. I said, yeah. And how do I know I'm having a memory? What is memory made of? And if you ask enough questions and if they're honest, if they are willing to stick with you, it always comes back to thought and thinking. We're feeling our thinking. And I say to it, I believe you. It's horrible to remember those painful things, right? That's what PTSD is. I lived in that disordered thinking for probably 10 years, right? And then I moved from Manchester to London to try and change, like, I think, change, like Wendy was saying, change the location, change the relationship, change the job. And the tension was still there because it wasn't in my body, it was in my thinking.
Yeah.
And the good news about that is our thinking changes.
Yeah. Fabulous.
Would I be oversimplifying it if I just try to reduce it all to a simple idea, in the field, what is it called? Psychoneuroimmunology, that the mind affects the immune system. If that's true, and I assume it is, then of course, everything that's going on in our body has to be a product of our thinking.
Yeah.
It has to be. It can't be any other way.
Right.
I mean, we didn't know that, there was always speculation about the mind. I started my training 50 years ago, and back then, I'm a clinical social worker. they talked about mind body, but there wasn't actual evidence. But we have actual evidence of that now. So that's why everything you're saying makes so much sense. Change your mind. What is it? William James quote? If you change your mind, you change your life. Something
Yeah.
along those lines. So that's the way I hear all this.
Yeah.
To me, it can't be anything other than that.
Right. And I don't believe there are any exceptions, because we often, we hear trauma all the time. And so, yes, if you've been through a traumatic experience, it's going to, how could it not affect your blood pressure and your adrenal glands, and, how the gut shuts down, because, like when we're in fight or flight, then one of the first things that it does is shut down the digestive system. Because if you're running for your life, then digesting lunch is a luxury, right? Which is, sorry to be gross for a second, but that's why people pee and poo themselves when they're really stressed, when they have a shock. It's not because like I had a shock, therefore I poo my pants. It's because if you have to run for it, you don't want to be running around with a full bladder, right? So it's an efficiency thing, right? So the digestive system shuts down, and this is why people with a lot of chronic stress have gut problems, is because the digestive system is shut down, and then you get hungry, and you put food into a system that is shut down, you're going to get bloating, you're going to get cramps, you're going to get IBS, you're going to get colitis and all kinds of other gut issues. Not because there's something, an illness in the gut. It's because it's on strike. It's like a factory that's on strike, right? And so you're putting stuff into a system that's not open for business. That's why people get a lot of gut problems. And the same with fertility. Making babies is a luxury if you're running for your life. So I think you're absolutely right that every thought we have creates some kind of physiological reaction, because it's the same as, it's not just true for trauma, it's true for fun. It's true for you smell mom making cookies, I'm sure there's something physiological that happens if we smell something or reminds us of a childhood smell. I went to Spain when I was little. My father took us to Spain when I was really little. So the smell of oranges still now, 50 something years later, has effects that produces an effect in me. So there's or certain music, I could be on the bus here and I'll hear a song from my teens, and I had a tear because it reminded me of breaking up with a boyfriend, right? How did those tears happen? So there's always physiological things happening. But going back to our, what Sid was pointing us to is learning about not to be frightened of that, right? Because I work with a lot of people with health anxiety, for example, and the doctors tell them there's nothing wrong. I've suggested that there's nothing wrong, and I haven't even met you, because the symptoms they're describing are inconsistent with how the nervous system works. The nervous, like if you're numb down one side of your body, the nervous system doesn't work like that. So these are the things I've learned in different trainings with medical doctors. And so I had this client, and she's beside herself. She's almost can't work because she's can't sleep because of the stress of this. And it's things like her eye twitch. Oh my gosh. So then she said to me, I didn't sleep last night. I said, why? What happened? She said, oh, I don't know. I'm just not sleeping properly. And then when she got honest, she told me that she'd been Googling at 3 o'clock in the morning for 3 hours. And because her eye was twitching. I think my eye twitches sometimes, and but she had gotten frightened by the eye twitching, so she Googles it, and then she got more honest with me, and she said the first 5 Google answered said stress, 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 and then the 6th or 7th one said it might be a sign of some autoimmune, like that's it. She was off, down a rabbit hole for the 20th time, finding out what could this autoimmune, and so that is filling her with a whole bunch of adrenaline. So of course she can't sleep, right? So it's not she has an insomnia problem. She has a busy mind problem. And that's easily solved when we see how it works. Now for her, she's going so fast she can't see it, sadly. And she will bounce around to more treatments and more coaches and more, because it's too simple for her complicated problem. I'm sure Laurie's had the same experience. We kind of, bring these ideas to people who are really suffering, and sometimes they get it. And it's amazing to see people's lives change. And other times their minds are going so fast or so low in the past and the pain that what we're offering is too simple for their, because I felt like that at a point. My problems are very sophisticated and complicated. What do you mean?
I just wanted to say, I looked up the exact quote from William James. If you
Yeah.
can change your mind, you can change your life. That was over 100 years ago. This quote is a powerful reminder of the impact our mindset has on our reality. It speaks to the incredible power of our thoughts, suggesting that by shifting our perspective, we can transform our experiences and outcomes.
Right. I think that is really powerful. I would just go a little bit further and say, because most people would read William James's comment and say, yes, he's so right. Let's start journaling. Let's start reframing. Let's start doing positive thinking. Let's do Pilates, let's do like whatever, like Cynthia was, describing all the things your son is doing to get that mindset better. And what we're saying is there's nothing wrong with it in the first place. When you understand that thought is always moving, and it's kind of like a self-correcting system when you understand it, that he's absolutely right. And there's nothing to do. And when we come back to the moment, we will be in that beautiful place.
Well, you seem to be saying, if I understand it correctly, it's a version of what I always thought the true basis of meditation was, is to sort of take ourselves out of the river of our consciousness, where we're constantly creating catastrophic fantasies, pull ourselves back into the witness position and just witness it without identifying with it. And then you see it's all, as the great philosophers say, it's all Maya, it's all illusion. It's all made up.
Right.
It's all
Right.
mind stuff. Just
Absolutely.
be here now.
Right. But I thought and believed and was taught that for many years. I lived in Southern California for 16 years and I did a lot of meditation. And I realized now that I didn't have to do that to be in that beautiful place. That's what Sid was pointing to. That's who we really are. So
No, that's the natural state, as I understand it. That's
right,
that's the myth of the Garden of Eden, but
I
we've
just
all
want to give you
fallen out of it.
just want to give you a Sid Banks quote. He said, "Do not confuse the state of meditation with the act of meditation." Right?
Yes.
Right, Laurie? We've spent a
Yes.
lot of time. I spent hours. I used to go on silent retreats in Santa Barbara. I was, spent a lot of time doing a lot of meditation. It was hard work, and it was frustrating because it's like I was told like my well-being is just that what you just beautiful thing you described. It's like if I just meditate a bit more, I'll get there. If I'll get there, I'll get there. Sid kept saying we're looking in the wrong direction, right? What you're describing is there. It's who we really are. It's when we understand and become aware of how it works. Then I'm automatically the observer. I don't have to work at being the observer. We just automatically become the observer of our stinky thinking when you understand how the system works. No
Absolutely.
Well, I think
What
I
a
was trying
great
to.
answer, Chana. That was so wonderful. When we understand how the system works, that changes everything. Stuart can attest to that. If Wendy and Mary had to go to work, but that was such a beautiful answer. And it reminds me of Sid saying, live life as a meditation.
Nice.
Now, Hannah, Stuart and I have been around this, Martin, we've been around this understanding for so long. And it's like every day we see it deeper and more. We see it everywhere.
Mhm.
It's such a miracle that one man named Sydney Banks could bring this understanding to humanity. It's an absolute miracle. Yeah. And it's an inside out understanding. William James is known as the father of psychology. He said someday there will be principles that will turn the field of psychology into a science. You would know more about that, Hannah, as I know that's all part of the study that you're working
Yeah.
with.
I mean I put that into the beginning of the book, beginning of diagnosis, because yeah, he said that there are principles, science has principles like thermodynamics and gravity are principles. And someone asked me recently, they said, are there people that the three principles don't work for? So I answered with a question, which is probably annoying. I said, are there people that gravity doesn't work for? Right? Because if there are, like at the time I just flown back from Denmark. I went to Denmark to do a retreat end of last year. And when I was asked that question, I was about to get on a plane and I was thinking, I don't want to get on this airplane if there are people on this plane who gravity doesn't work for. Right? That'd be a scary thought, right? So are there people that gravity doesn't work for? No, that's what I meant by there are no exceptions when I was talking to Martin. Like there are no exceptions. These are I think that's brilliant that Sid called them principles, right? They're not concepts, they're principles. And if you look up the word principles in the dictionary, it'll say something like facts that are true throughout the universe. Like it's not reliable on my opinion. You can, like Sid famously would say, like, you can disagree with me, and then you're using mind, thought, and consciousness to disagree with me. Right? That's okay. You can disagree, but you have to be using these principles in order to put those thoughts together. So their principles are such a fantastic way to describe this, because we can all see how gravity is universal. Thermodynamics is universal. The principles were in operation long before Sid came along, right? Like gravity was operating long before Sir Isaac Newton and Einstein came along and started putting mathematics to it, right? And also gravity and the principles will work even if I disagree with it. They'll just keep being because they just are. So people say, like, oh, that, I prefer my therapy, or I prefer yoga, and I tried the principles, it didn't work for me. I'm like, okay. But how are you doing yoga and therapy if you didn't have mind, thought, and consciousness, So
I just
yeah.
wanted to be clear about something. I'm not sure
Exactly.
whoops.
Yeah.
What did I do?
No, I can hear you, Leonard.
No, there. I just wanted to be clear. I'm not sure I expressed myself well. Like you, I started meditating in my early 20s, and I did it for a little while, and I realized for me, there's nothing wrong per se for meditation, but it wasn't for me because I met a lot of people who'd been meditating 30, 40 years, and I wasn't particularly impressed with the way or where they were in life. And I realized, what good is it going to do me if I can, so to say, reach nirvana for 20 minutes twice a day, and the rest of the day I'm a fucking asshole, right?
Yeah.
So I decided what I really need to do. I've been a tennis player all my life, and I played college tennis. And I realized almost everything I know about the truth of life, I learned through tennis. Because I'll give you an example. A lot of times when I'm playing really well, my opponent will come up to me and go, it's so tough to play you because I can't figure out where you're going to hit the ball. And I say, well, that makes two of us because if I'm really in the zone, I'm flowing, there is no thought. I never think when I'm really playing well. And it's the same thing when I started out as a therapist. I used to think about what to say to clients. And of course, when I was doing that, I wasn't really listening because I was thinking. But
Right.
as I began to
Exactly.
trust myself, which I had no trust in the beginning,
Mhm.
I don't almost ever think about anything when I'm just spontaneous in the moment. And I trust if I do say something, I'll apologize. And my client and I will go through an experience that will help us both grow. So it's all about just sort of being in the moment, be here now, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
easier said than done because we have lifelong habits. We've all been conditioned into a certain reality. And as you're saying, that reality is a myth. It doesn't exist. It only exists if we believe it exists. But
Absolutely.
it's
Yeah.
challenging because almost everybody you talk to lives in that myth.
Right. Right.
The
Absolutely.
operative word is misunderstanding, right, Hannah?
Yeah.
That changes everything for people when they begin to get an understanding. It changes, like we were talking about what sounded like people could misunderstand. This sounds like positive thinking. Change a thought, like William James said, change a thought. Oh, okay, I'm going to walk around and do positive thinking. And that was a trend for a while. That was pop psychology for a while. That's part of the misunderstanding. And what Sid Banks, I mean, there have been many, like Hannah said, mystics and through the years, through the ages, who have brought amazing wake up realizations. But it wasn't until I listened to Sid, until I heard Sid, and I could not tell you at first what he was saying, but everything came together about everything that Hannah is talking about, everything that Leonard Mart Stewart is talking about came together when I heard Sid pointing to within ourselves. And that's what gave me the faith to get quieter up here. Being able to hear Hannah's experiences, her personal experience that was so dramatic. And having I would guess that you would say you're like a different person now, right, Hannah? Yeah.
In many ways, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
I think as I'm listening, I think everybody at some point in their life has seen this for themselves.
Yes.
And then we forget.
Yeah.
And then we get back into, but for me, having the constant reminder and to talk about it and to then check it out as I go through my life and see it. And then I can see it in other areas. And there are no exceptions in other areas of my life. Like you said before, there are no exceptions. So, Lori, I did speak with my brother. Okay. Now, our minds,
This is being recorded, Stuart.
it's okay. I don't care.
Is that okay? And I'm going to send it to Mark.
Send it to him. It's fine. We already talked. So, we create stories in our minds. We want to fill in the blanks. We want to know why. Right. And then we realize that we're creating a story. And then when there's communication, then you get a better idea and then you can understand. And we're all going through this, all of us as human beings. And sometimes I remember, sometimes I forget. How long is that time? How long is that space where I'm forgetting? That's up to me. But having the understanding is what can save us from spending all that time and wasting all that precious time on things that are not important. And it really is up to us to define what's important to us. How much money do I need to have to be okay? How much, how many bedrooms do I need in my house to be okay? For me, probably just a bed would be fine with me, but not everybody's the same. We have to figure out what it is. And it's the power of thought that amazes me sometimes. It just amazes me. And, I'm on a journey and whoever I connect with and talk to on this journey, I learn something new every day, every single day. But going back to what I said before, there are certain moments in my life that I know that I saw this. And then now hearing this, it's like, that's what that was.
Mhm.
That's what that was.
Mhm. You're about to say something, Hannah.
No, I just said it's such a beautiful thing that Stuart's pointing to. It's like that's why I think Dickon and Natasha called their book Coming Home. It's because, you know, the deep down we kind of all know this. It just got covered up by so much stinky thinking and old ideas and belief systems and you know, unfortunate experiences. And then we don't trust it. And I think a lot of the people I talk to, my clients, are really good at sabotage. They might feel a little bit better and they're like, but it's not going to last. Or it might work for you, but it's not going to work for me, you know, that kind of stuff. And I think we can have insights when we're in a low mood. I just think we're just not good at accessing them so well because we'll dismiss it, we'll downgrade it, we'll, you know, sabotage it. You know, so it's like Laurie's saying about that understanding, you know, when you understand it. And just a little story just came to my mind. I was at a one-day workshop with Michael Neal and Dickon Bettinger in London after the conference one year. And someone asked them this great question. They said to the pair of them, they said, what are you like in a low mood? Right? Which is a great question because it's not like, do you ever get a low mood? Of course, we all do, right? We're human, like you said, like I forget, I remember, I forget. So Michael answered first and he said, oh, I'm a real dick. Ask my wife, right? Can you imagine, right? And then, but what I really remember though is then Dickon, I don't remember him saying what he was like, but he said, but what I've learned is to take my grounding with me. Right? Because we all can get into a low mood. We can all, you know, have a funk. We can all like get sick or be tired or something. There's moments when I'm not at my best. But if I can take my grounding with me, take this understanding with me, so that sometimes can look like just it's gonna pass, it's gonna pass, it's gonna pass. You know, if I can just if that's all I can remember, then I'm gonna do better than panicking and thinking it's, you know, the end of the world's coming. So taking this understanding with us as best we can into those, you know, moments when we're dealing with life's bumpy problems, then I think that's one of the huge blessings I've gotten from this, and you know, this understanding is even when things don't make sense and they're, you know, very difficult, then I know it's going to pass, even if I can't see, you know, massive insights in this moment. And then it passes, and then we come back to the sunshine and the blue sky, and they're like, oh yeah, I got caught up in that illusion again.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. I mean, we were all built so magnificently with, we call it an inner GPS system, you know, that'll guide us because our feelings let us know when we're going off track and when we're spinning our wheels. It's just so amazing how we're built. Yeah.
Divinely engineered.
Divinely engineered. Yes. Isn't that a beautiful way of putting it? We're divinely engineered. And, you know, there are a number of groups where we stay in this conversation with each other, you know, whenever our schedule allows us to be. So when I send out the recording to everyone, I'll send out a list of groups, and Hannah and Stuart will share, you know, their groups, and I'll include that with the recording.
Oh, great. Yeah, good. Wow. It was so nice to hang out with you guys.
Yeah, this was just so great. Thank you so much for taking the time. It came about because of a group where we have a book group. And the book group that the book that we began reading was Chana's book, Beyond Diagnosis. And it is jam-packed. It is filled with stories and case studies by Dr. Bill Pettit and case studies by Dr. Tom Kelly and They're all doing a research project. Can you speak to that at all before we say goodbye?
Yeah, it was really flattering because Jack Pransky had the idea of taking the data from this book, like you said, like treating them like case studies and turning it into data. And Tom Kelly, who's already published multiple research papers, peer-reviewed stuff on the principles, the effectiveness of the principles, had the same idea at the same time. So they started talking to each other about it, and they said, well, we should get Hannah involved too. Now, I have to tell you, this has been on my bucket list for a good few years to actually write a research paper, because I say I'm not a doctor. I don't even have a college degree. I left for a wildlife of rock and roll, and it was the 80s when I was in college, and I never went back. I did get an Academy Award in the movie business, but that doesn't really count in the mental health field. So to have a published research paper has been a dream of mine for a long time. So it was a big honor for them to ask me to join them. So Tom was brilliant in working out the different things that we would do. He gave Jack jobs to do, and he gave me research jobs to do with the stories. Like I accumulated a lot of information in terms of the different techniques people had tried, and so we divided it up into traditional techniques like therapy and psychotherapy and medications and stuff like that, and then the alternative things people had tried like Feldenkrais or Pilates or 12-step programs, things like that. So we kind of they've turned that into charts and graphs and stuff, and the percentages, and then Jack wrote up amazing reports on the effectiveness of like the change that happened when people came across the principles. And so we like had several meetings and edited it into a paper, and then because Tom has done this many times, so he submitted it to the American Psychiatric Association. Of course, it got rejected straight away. It's too woo-woo for them, but you have to start somewhere. So so then the American Psychological Association has multiple journals, different publications that they have. So it's being peer reviewed right now in the, I think, Psychology and Spirituality journal, and it's in the peer review stage. And I get emails every now and again saying it's gone through this, and this. Tom warned us it probably will take about 6 months. So it's been 2 months already. So we're expecting hopefully to hear something by the beginning of the summer. So it's still not guaranteed it will be published, but they haven't rejected it yet. So I think it's doing the rounds with all the people who are peer reviewing it. So there's going to be a few edits, I'm sure, but hopefully it will be successful, and then we'll have another for the principals community, it'll be another piece of research that gives validity to the work we're doing. And personally, I get to be a published researcher, so which I'm very excited about. Yeah.
Well, that's cool, because who knows what might come about.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
other ideas.
In fact, I got interviewed. Two big things happened recently. I was on the BBC on the World Service a couple of weeks ago, which was amazing. And then I was interviewed by a researcher from Haifa University last week. This guy's doing his PhD, and he came across the 3 principles like 2 months ago, and he's so taken by it. He wants to he's rewriting his thesis, and he had to get approval from the his thesis advisors. So he interviewed me and asked me lots of the kind of questions, things that we've been talking about, on this webinar. And so Haifa University is now going to start doing research on it. So you never know you just keep showing up. You never know what's going to happen, right?
Exactly. Oh, that's so great. I'm so happy to hear about all that. You know what it reminds me of? When Jack's first book was going to press, he held it back because he had just discovered the principles. His first book was all on prevention.
Right.
And so he held the printing press back so he could say, I just found out about something, stay tuned. And then he went on, he's up to 10 books now.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, if people have more questions, please reach out. I'm happy to ask, answer more questions if it can be helpful. I'm happy to do that. Yeah. So,
Yeah, be great. I have one thing to differ with you, Hannah. When you said that your movie industry did nothing for the psychological aspect, not true, because everything teaches
Right.
us what our
Yes.
psychology is
Right.
about. So that was your, I mean, you have great stories from that time in your life
Yeah.
that you now
Yeah.
understand through the principles. Now you have a new understanding of things
Yeah.
that would have upset any of us in the past.
Right. And it's all an illusion anyway, so, which is what Hollywood's all about. Yeah. Yeah. Good stuff. Great.
Well, we certainly went beyond our hour, didn't we? We're up to an hour and a half, and I hope that people will listen clear to the
Yeah.
end, because there have been so many gems shared during this time together. And I
Mhm.
can't thank you enough for taking the time to be with us, Hannah.
My pleasure. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just ask you, Laurie, is this what will this be posted on? Because I got the wrong time. I wouldn't care. I've been sitting here for the last hour, but I've missed it, haven't I?
Yes, 1 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time. We changed our
Yeah.
clocks 2 weeks ago.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
I can't
Emma,
work
I
it
was
out.
almost late too.
You'll get the recording, Emma. Yeah,
Thank you.
you'll
Right.
get the recording.
Thanks.
Okay.
So,
All right.
yeah, I'm
Take
glad
care,
you made part of
everybody.
it.
Bye.
Take
Bye.
care now.
Bye.
Wonderful. Great to see you all. I'm going to stop the recording. Anybody? Stop.